Guys, and welcome back to another House of Devlin video, and this is a fitness related video, and it's all about as you get bigger, why do you get stiffer? Now, this isn't always an absolute truth, but you only have to really think of some stereotypes, really. The really big guys who have put on a shitload of size, a load of muscle, a load of strength. They're big, they're massive, but then they go to scratch the back of their head or their back and they can't reach. That's not just because their biceps are so big they get in the way. It's not that, although that has some impact on it. It's the fact that they are stiff. They are inflexible. They've lost the flexibility they had when they were teenagers, for example. Most teenagers are very flexible, just naturally. They're all, they've maintained the flexibility that they had in childhood, and from there on in, it's kind of a downhill progression. If you don't maintain your flexibility as you get older, your flexibility just goes down naturally. It's just one of those sort of things of getting older. You become stiffer, right? But the common conception is that the bigger guys are typically far stiffer than smaller guys of their same age group. And as I say, they might not be able to scratch the back of the head. They might not be able to touch their toes to the point where they can't put their socks on properly. They need someone to help them put on their socks. They can't maybe reach around to, put their tie on properly, or tie, do their shirt up, or things like this. These are the common, and if I want to be really crude, some of them even struggle to wipe their own ass. Okay, now part of it is, I say, is just because they're so big, but the other part of it is because they have allowed themselves to lose their flexibility, and they've done nothing to maintain or even develop their flexibility. Now, the contrast to it, if you look at some of the bodybuilders that are sort of more commonly known, for example, I'm going to pick one particular example out. Ronnie Coleman, for example, when he was at his peak, often in his pose down routines, he would do the splits on stage. Now, that shows you, and he was massive, that shows you that big guys can be flexible. But how do they manage it? And why do the other ones who are big, perhaps not even as big as someone like that, how do they lose their flexibility? Okay, well, first of all, over time, as I say, with age, you'll just naturally lose your flexibility. If you don't use it, you lose it. It's just an age thing. Okay, and so, if you're doing general maintenance of flexibility, you're stretching on a semi-regular basis, or you're doing a sport which requires a certain degree of flexibility, such as martial arts, for example, or gymnastics, or anything along these lines, then your flexibility is not going to really be lost that much, if any, at all. You're going to maintain a functional level of flexibility for quite a long time before old age really kind of hits. Okay. However, weightlifting is not one of those sports which helps maintain flexibility. It can, unfortunately, contribute to, as I say, a loss of flexibility. It can make you very, very stiff. But there are ways to counter it. But before I get into the ways of countering it, we first of all, of course, need to understand, why does weightlifting, in contrast to other sports like gymnastics and martial arts, for example, and rock climbing and all these kind of different sports, why does weightlifting have such a negative impact on flexibility? Well, when I say weightlifting, I don't mean Olympic weightlifting. I mean just the whole scope of the disciplines. Out of all of the disciplines, Olympic weightlifting, there is a significant amount of flexibility maintained. But when we look at bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman, that's what I'm sort of talking about when I say weightlifting. Why do we see a significant loss of flexibility? Well, it's quite a simple answer, but it's quite complicated to put into words, so I'll do my best, but I'm sure you'll understand the point that I'm putting across. As you train rates, the whole purpose, of course, is typically to gain size and strength. That's why we do it. To maintain an aesthetic look, yes. To develop abs, to look good, to pull the girls or whatever, or just to make ourselves feel better, yes. These are other reasons why people lift weights. But one of the main reasons you lift weights, because there are other ways to do that. You can diet and you can do cardio and things like this, right? But one of the main reasons why you do weights is because you want to get bigger and you want to get stronger. You want your muscles to develop to a much grander size than what they naturally are. Okay, what you're born with, essentially. Okay. Now the process of weightlifting, lifting heavy weights against resistance, i.e. gravity, causes the muscles to respond to such an exercise by undergoing hypertrophy. Now, the muscles will do this in any sport to some degree, but weightlifting is the one that does or impacts upon the hypertrophy aspect of the muscle growth the most, because that's what it's designed to do. It's a sport designed, a sport designed to make you bigger, faster than any other sport. It specializes in strength. Okay, and so lifting heavy weights causes your muscle to grow, and we call that growth process, as I say, hypertrophy. You can't grow new muscle. Your old muscle just gets bigger. It gains new muscle fibers within the muscle that still exists. Okay, so let's say a typical muscle, for example, in the shoulder has 1,000 muscle fibers to start off with. As it hypertrophies after about 10 years of training, instead of having 1,000 muscle fibers, it might have 10,000 muscle fibers. It's not going to be 10 to, well, yeah, that's a bit big, but it might have 3,000 or 4,000 muscle fibers. It might have increased in size by 3 or 4 times its original size. And with that, it will have increased significantly in strength. Not necessarily 3 to 4 times the strength, because it's not always linear like that. You know, if you're twice as big, you're not necessarily twice as strong. But the principles are there. You see what I'm trying to say? That as you get bigger, the muscle gets bigger, you do gain strength. Now, the problem is if you don't maintain, if you're not actively stretching whilst developing your muscles, if you're not stretching regularly, and I mean almost every workout that you do weights, you're not doing some form of stretching routine either at the beginning or the end of your workout, then what happens is the new muscle that you develop is very stiff muscle, and it stiffens up the muscle that you used to have and causes the loss of flexibility to occur at a much faster rate than what your aging process would normally cause. How it does that is, if you imagine you've got, say, let's just say for example, you gain 4 pounds of muscle, okay, and previous to that you had, I'm just going to make up some figures, 50 pounds of muscle. Now you've got 50 pounds of muscle that is let's say it's on the shoulder joint more, and let's say that you've got 8 pounds of muscle and you gain 4 pounds of muscle. Let's make the figures a little bit smaller so there's a bit of a more significant impact. Okay, now at this point, at the original point, the original origin is 8 pounds of muscle. That 8 pounds of muscle is trained, it's athletic, it's toned, the tendons are nice and efficient in their movements, and the muscle is flexible because it's been stretched, or it's flexible. Okay, because your starting point is, we're assuming, someone who is of at least functional flexibility. The problem is as you get bigger, as you put size on, as I say, that 8 pounds goes to 9 pounds, then 10 pounds, 11 pounds to 12 pounds. It gains 4 pounds of size over whatever period of time it might be. That might take some people a year to do. For some people, it might only take a few months. For other people, it could take a decade to gain. But let's look at the slightly shorter periods of time. If you are gaining sort of a pound of muscle every sort of couple of months, what happens is the muscle that you get that becomes hypertrophied within the pre-existing muscle is new muscle. And by new muscle, I mean it is new. It has never been trained before, even though it's been developed through training. It's just grown in response to training, but itself has never been trained before. And as a result, its strength is not brilliant. It's not as strong as the other muscle within the same muscle group. Okay, its efficiency is lower because the tendons aren't as taut. It's not as toned as the rest of the muscle. It's not as athletic as the rest of the muscle, and of course it's not as flexible as the rest of the muscle because it's fresh muscle. Okay, it hasn't been worked, it hasn't been shaped, it hasn't been manipulated through your weightlifting, your sport, your stretching, and all the rest of it. And so what happens is you've just increased your muscle mass of the particular muscle group in question by 50%. And 50% of that muscle, if you don't, will become trained over time, because you're doing the exercises hopefully on a continuous basis, and so the muscles themselves will become toned, they will become strong, they will become athletic, but they won't become flexible unless you stretch them. They will remain stiff and will get stiffer if not stretched. And so what will happen is you've got 50% of the muscle which is stretched and flexible, and 50% of the muscle that is very inflexible, and so it kind of evens out that you lose, say, roughly 25-30% of the flexibility of the muscle, and that's why as you get bigger you lose a lot of flexibility, because if you're not actively stretching the muscle as you are gaining size, the new muscle that you gain, even though you're training it a lot with the weight training stuff, because it's not being stretched, it remains inflexible, and you get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer because more of your body is fresher, newer muscle that just simply has never been stretched. And so the answer is, and it's a simple answer, and I'm sure you already can see it, is that the way to maintain or even develop flexibility whilst getting bigger, whilst putting size on, is to have some kind of stretching regimen in place from day one, and that's something that you do on a continuous and regular basis throughout your entire time doing weightlifting, your entire career of doing weightlifting. Okay, so that routine, for example, for me, luckily, was my martial arts. I am a martial artist. My passion is weightlifting, but I am a martial arts artist by trade, in theory, and so simply just doing the kicks, the punches, sparring and things like this, I maintained a certain level of flexibility, and as I got bigger, my muscles were forced to gain the flexibility that the older muscle had. If not, they would tear, and I have had muscle tears in the past because I've not stretched enough in the past. I have made mistakes myself. I've not stretched enough in the past. However, now I'm very vigorous. I stretch every day. Every day I just do a light amount of stretching, not much, 15-20 minutes, something like that. At the beginning of every workout I do a little bit of stretching and a little bit of cardio, just so that any muscle that I gain, any size that I gain, or any size that I have gained over the years that hasn't been trained in such a way, can catch up with the older muscle, the athletic muscle, the tone muscle, the fit muscle, the stretched muscle. Okay, and so that's what I am doing at the moment. I am actively trying to stretch, I suppose, the new muscle, which is very inflexible in comparison to the older muscle. And so this is how, as I say, you can get inflexible as you get bigger. But it's easily solved. You simply stretch as you go along. I mean, it's a simple answer, and I'm sure that's what you expected. There's no real magic in weightlifting. There's no magic wand that you can do to make yourself bigger instantly. It takes hard work to get big. It takes many years of dedication to diet and weight, your training and everything like that. So it takes discipline to get to the size and strength that you want to get, and it takes the same discipline to also maintain the healthy aspects of your training, such as flexibility and fitness also. And you need to maintain this, because if not, if you're in it to get big, if you're in it to get as big as possible, there will unfortunately come the day, one point, where you can't put your own socks on because you're so stiff. You need people to really look after you, and that's call disabled, really. You know, you are making yourself at least functionally disabled. You know, you can't perform basic human functions at that point. You need help getting changed. It's an embarrassing thing. It's not something that you want in your life. And I've seen it in many people, many very large men indeed. I admire their bulk, I admire their size, I admire their strength, but I don't admire that lack of flexibility, that lack of health that they have. And so this is my video, hopefully, where it has an impact. Some people will listen to this and go, you know what, he's speaking sense. I need to start stretching now. It's never too late to start, but of course the best place to start is at the beginning. If you're just starting off, always never forget the importance of stretching. I know it's boring. I know it's boring. I know it can be tedious, but I tell you what, once you lose it, it is so much harder to get back. It really is. So it's easier to keep it than it is to get it. So if you've still got it, if you've still got some degree of flexibility, then please hang on to it. And it doesn't take much effort at that point. You know, 10-15 minutes, as I say, every workout, just doing a bit of light stretching, nothing too heavy, will be more than enough to help the new muscle that you develop catch up and develop into it, like the old muscle that you have, essentially. I hope that makes sense. Thanks for watching, guys. As I say, I hope that insight is being put forward to you correctly, and I'll see you soon. Lovely. Bye bye.